Sir Peter Soulsby made a bit of a U-turn over his opinion on the Leicester lockdown. We may now know why he had a change of heart. Is the Police Federation worried about werewolves ahead of Super Saturday? Leicester lockdown, but are other areas more affected by COVID than Leicester? Avon and Somerset police saw an alleged assault victim as a drug addict and a sex worker who wasn't worth further time and effort. This and more coming up. Please don't forget that these reports are daily, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and of course in-betweeners. My name's Dan, welcome back to another PAP Reports. It's Thursday, July the 2nd, 2020. Yesterday, Merseyside Police Custody Sergeant Peter Jordan was due to appear at Warrington Magistrates Court, charged with causing actual bodily harm to a man in custody. The 23-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of being drunk and disorderly and taken to St Anne Street Police Station, where he suffered injuries to his face during his detainment, which, after the IOPC investigation, a file was passed to the Crown Prosecution Service, who authorised the charge against Sergeant Jordan. Now, although Jordan appeared at Warrington Magistrates Court yesterday, the proceedings were unable to go ahead. No reason given, but has been rescheduled for Tuesday, July the 7th. Jordan has been released on bail again, but interestingly, Sergeant Jordan, who's been charged with assault occasioning actual bodily harm, remains a sergeant with Merseyside Police and continues working for the force, although he is said to be on restricted duties. Also in yesterday's report about the Leicester lockdown, I said I wonder why Leicester Mayor Sir Peter Soulsby seemed to not be putting up too much of a fuss about the lockdown, which just a few days previously he said there was basically no indication that a lockdown would actually go ahead. Well, after I recorded that report, I found something interesting, which could explain why he now seems to have done a U-turn on his stance about the local lockdown. 71-year-old Soulsby himself has flouted the lockdown rules in order to visit his girlfriend and stay at her house overnight. Now, some of you are going to say, well, you know, who cares? And I feel the same way. But this is the mayor, not one of us mere members of the public. And these people are supposed to be setting an example, especially if they're going to continue pushing this so-called virus. Soulsby's girlfriend's neighbour filmed him at her house on several occasions as he arrived carrying overnight bags and carrying out some maintenance on her property. This was all while he was using social media to urge his city residents to stay at home and follow the guidance. So could it be that Sir Peter Soulsby's change of direction on the lockdown, and the fact he seems to be accepting it now, be due to the fact that he himself had been caught out and in order to keep his job or some other benefit, he's been made to support Matt Hancock's local lockdown of Leicester? It can't be proven, but to me it seems like a reasonable cause for him to have changed his stance on the lockdown so quickly. What do you think? Obviously let me know in the comments. Two of the Nightingale hospitals that were built quick time to cope with the amount of people said to be affected by COVID-19 are to be turned into cancer testing hospitals. Now, before you have a go at me, I actually think it's a great idea. People with cancer, which in my opinion is far worse than this virus, are suffering or being left to become ill because everyone is concentrating on COVID. So this is not about them being turned into cancer testing centres. Sir Simon Stevens revealed that the 200-bed Exeter Nightingale site will start screening multiple patients a day starting from Monday to help cope with the growing number of people waiting for tests to find out if they have cancer. Charities have also warned that there could be an additional 18,000 cancer deaths in 2020 because of the number of patients who have been diagnosed too late. Now, what makes this interesting for me is the fact that the media is spinning the potential second wave. Ministers have said the same. It's a seed that's being sown and has been for some weeks, so if there is such a chance of a second wave, which everyone seems to think will be worse than the first, why take away the hospitals that were built for such a situation? Now again, I'm not knocking the idea that cancer patients or those who need testing are now going to get to be seen, because that's good. It's the contradictory nature of how the government are behaving that causes me concern. I mean, just stop talking rubbish. How can you say with a straight face that there is such a risk of a second wave, and with it being worse than the first, but then give up the beds in the hospitals that were designed to deal with such a situation? It just doesn't make sense to me. To be honest, the Nightingale hospitals didn't make any sense in the first place, as all the videos of people coming forward has proven, with entire wards being empty in hospitals during the first wave, when we were being told that the hospitals were rammed to the rafters with people with coronavirus. John Apter, chair of the Police Federation, has been expressing his concern over the so-called Super Saturday this coming weekend, when lockdown restrictions are to be lifted sufficiently to allow pubs, bars and restaurants to reopen, except in Leicester. Apter has said that the police have had 4 months of pressure and frustration being built up, saying that we've seen some violence on the street, an awful lot of it for police officers, and an awful lot by police officers. Don't forget that bit, Mr. Apter. He said the day the easing of lockdown was announced for the 4th of July was also made in a celebratory type way, almost like a public holiday. It's far from a public holiday. Policing is tough at the best of times. The easing of this lockdown, especially when you introduce alcohol and opening bars and restaurants. If people are thinking this is what is going to be the normal times, policing is tough at the best of times. The easing of this lockdown, especially when you introduce alcohol and opening bars and restaurants. If people are thinking this is what it's going to be in normal times, they're very much mistaken. He went on to say that we encourage the government to choose an alternative date. On top of that, it's not far from payday. People will have just been paid, and for the emergency services, this will resonate. It's a full moon, which creates a whole host of other issues. What, like werewolves? The thing is, the longer people have to wait before they can go out, the worse that first day is going to be. Whether it's the 4th of July or the 11th of July, it's not going to make a difference. What will make a difference, however, is leaving it longer. I mean, if the police are so worried, if the government is so worried, then ask pubs to restrict how many drinks someone can have. I'm not a drinker anyway, so it doesn't affect me. But, if in these unprecedented times there's such a risk of disorder by people getting drunk, then ask the pubs, bars and restaurants to limit the number of drinks each person can have. Granted, you won't be able to track how many drinks everyone's had, but it will help to mitigate some of the potential for disorder. Heading back to Leicester now, and a warning, as police will be setting up on the border of the city in order to catch people leaving the lockdown zone and prevent them from leaving and fine them £100. I've got this image in my head of the 2016 film Viral, where the two sisters try and escape their town and run into a military roadblock. Another vehicle comes up behind them, overtakes and makes a run for the freedom before the military open fire and turn his truck into a cheese grater. It seems as though it won't just be random vehicle stops, but any vehicle leaving the area will be stopped. Whether that's cars, minibuses, motorbikes, coaches, they'll all be turned around if deemed unnecessary travel, whilst police will have patrols in public areas such as parks as well. However, the key workers will of course be able to travel, but going shopping or going for a night out will obviously be deemed as a breach of guidance. I know it's guidance, and guidance is great, but it's not the law. However, we can see where this is heading, and this is simply going to give the government the push to make the guidance law and really enforce it. Although I think people have forgotten the power of the people. We must remember that there is more of us than there is of them, and if it comes to the crunch, they wouldn't stand a chance. I'm not talking about any kind of violence, by the way, but if enough people decided to not do something, or do something, there's very little the establishment can do about it. What they will do is target the people they think are the ringleaders in order to frighten everyone else, but they cannot deal with everyone. But at the moment, there simply isn't enough people with a backbone to stand up to the unlawful infringements of our rights, because still too many are blinded by their misplaced trust in those who are supposed to work for us, but instead control us. Health Secretary Hancock said that the government had no choice but to impose a citywide lockdown after a series of targeted measures, included working with factories which had seen a spike in cases failed to halt the spread. That's the Walker's Crisp factory, which is said to have found 28 workers to be infected, by the way. He said it was clear that we needed to take this further action following talks in Whitehall on Tuesday. I understand that people in Leicester have difficulties, especially when the rest of the country is having lockdown measures lifted, that they are going to be asked to stay at home for that much longer. But it is profoundly in the interests of people in Leicester and across the country that we get this virus under control. Now, with that said about Leicester, we should be under no illusion that this won't happen elsewhere. In fact, in my opinion, as I said a few days ago, I think this is the test bed the government's way of testing how compliant we are likely to be, how the police are able to cope, etc., before bringing the blame back onto the public for causing a second wave and locking down other towns and cities. They're already saying that infections have risen in the Medway, the boroughs of Hammersmith and Fulham and Ealing in London, and Lanarkshire and Dumfries and Galloway in Scotland. In his speech on Tuesday, Boris Johnson acknowledged the potential dangers ahead. As we approach the 4th of July, he said, "I'm afraid that the dangers, as we can see in Leicester, have not gone away. The virus is out there, still circling like a shark in the water, and it will take all our collective discipline and resolve to keep that virus at bay." A spokesperson for the Department for Health and Social Care said, "We have been working closely with our local partners, providing them with the resources and tools so that they can take swift action to deal with any new local spikes in infection." But yet, many people are still complaining that the government isn't supplying enough data on those infected, which is making it hard for them to identify where the cases are. Now, what I find astonishing is that this graph shows Leicester and 3 other areas, which actually shows Anglesey is showing 4 times more cases and Barnsley has more cases per 100,000 people than Leicester. But it's Leicester that's being locked down. Do you not find that odd? Metropolitan Police had to have words with their Homerton division after some idiot plod decided to tweet, "Kicking down doors is probably one of our favourite things." The tweet, which was hastily deleted a short while afterwards, received, as you would expect, some backlash from residents of the area and from Owen Jones, although Owen Jones is a dick, so I'm not really going to promote anything of his on here. One reply said, "As a Homerton resident, I find this now deleted tweet very disturbing. This is why defunding the police and ring-fencing policing budgets for local services is needed." Another said that the tweet was sinister, adding, "As someone who lives in Homerton, it makes me feel terrified." In a statement, the Metropolitan Police said, "We are aware of an inappropriate tweet sent from the @MPS Homerton Twitter account. The officer who tweeted this has been given words of advice and the Professional Standards Unit have been made aware. The tweet has now been deleted." Avon and Somerset Police Constable PC Emma Benson-shaw is facing a misconduct hearing this week. The hearing is set to investigate allegations that PC Benson-shaw treated a victim of an alleged sexual assault with disrespect because she was a drug addict and a prostitute, and that she failed to inform paramedics that the victim had said she had taken an overdose. The hearing that is set to last this entire week was told Benson-shaw saw the victim as a drug addict and a sex worker who wasn't worth further time and effort. The hearing was told PC Benson-shaw was called to a hostel last summer where she was told by the woman that she had overdosed, but she took it as a throwaway comment. The woman was later found unresponsive, but PC Benson-shaw did not relay the claim to paramedics that she had taken all of her pills. Benson-shaw denies turning off her body-worn camera to collude with her colleague, PC Joshua Stevens, who also faces misconduct allegations, on how to get away from the scene. She said she turned off the camera because it was awkward and embarrassing that neither of them knew what to do. Well, maybe you shouldn't be in the police if you didn't know that when someone tells you that they've taken an overdose, you should pass that information on to the paramedics. Not exactly rocket science, is it? Whether you believe that person or not. 2 Wiltshire police constables were taken to hospital yesterday morning after their response vehicle crashed. The marked police car was travelling along the A4 on Chequers Hill when it collided with a large road sign and came to rest in a ditch just before 5 a.m. on that morning. It's been stated that the response vehicle was not responding to any incident and were in fact carrying out general patrols in North Wiltshire. Spokesperson for Wiltshire Police said shortly before 5 a.m. this morning on the 1st of the 7th, a marked police car was involved in a single vehicle collision on the A4 near Chippingham. 2 on-duty officers were in the vehicle and were taken to the Royal United Hospital to be assessed. As a precaution, thankfully, they were not seriously injured. 6 police vehicles and 2 ambulances were at the scene following the collision. How the hell does a police vehicle travelling at the speed limit, driven by an advanced driver, on an empty road, hit a road sign that's not in the road with enough force to ricochet the vehicle into a ditch? This is going to make for a very interesting explanation. Idiots. Well, it seems like the virtue signallers are finally getting to understand what many people have been saying for some time now. Since the Black Lives Matter movement started after the death of George Floyd in America, everyone who wanted a bit of attention jumped on the bandwagon, many without even researching the deeper motives behind the movement. Ignoring the fact that the Black Lives Matter protesters claim to be fighting for justice for black people, but yet have been burning down black people's businesses, looting them and destroying black communities, whilst being funded and raising funds on places like GoFundMe, which, by the way, has over £1 million raised so far, with absolutely no indication that the money being raised has or is going to do anything to make black lives better. However, it now appears that although almost every organisation that's not supposed to be political, who suddenly turned political over the BLM movement, some are beginning to see this for what it is after the BLM-UK released tweets on Sunday criticising Israel and calling for the defunding of police. What gets me is that they have been calling to defund the police for weeks, but only Sunday did it seem to sink in for people. Patrice Evra and Jamie Redknapp both removed their Black Lives Matter badges before going on air on Tuesday, and Gary Neville was seen to have removed his badge too. All of this comes after the Premier League decided to distance itself from what's now being called a far-left ideology of Black Lives Matter. Since mid-June, the virtue signallers were out in force, trying to prove just how unracist they are by emblazoning just about everything they could with the BLM logo, promoting and pushing the movement, which I've said before isn't a bad thing if highlighting discrimination is what they were really after, but it seems that the BLM might have had ulterior motives from the start and simply used the death of George Floyd as their gateway to cause some havoc. Although the Premier League have taken a step back from the BLM, they are still allowing players to wear shirts with Black Lives Matter on the back if they want to, and allowing them to take a knee before the game starts, if they want to. The Premier League said it recognised the importance of the message that Black Lives Matter, without referring to the organisation's name in uppercase, but made clear that it does not endorse any political organisation or movement, nor support any group that calls for violence or condones illegal activity. But Chiefs are not expected to ditch the BLM badge on shirts, having drawn a distinction between BLM's cause and the group itself. And while the players remain united in campaigning for equality and maintaining such symbolic gestures for the rest of the season, some are concerned about being associated with the political activism of BLM. Keir Starmer, who's taken a knee himself, called it a shame that the sentiment behind the BLM protest was getting tangled up with these organisational issues, and said calls to defund the police were nonsense. I'm surprised that no one's claimed the Twitter page was hacked by far-right racists, or that far-right racists have infiltrated the BLM movement. Upon seeing the Sky Sports presenters had stopped wearing BLM badges on air, fans were quick to share their thoughts on Twitter, with one saying if only they'd done a little research like us peasants did before jumping in with both feet. Another wrote, maybe research an organisation next time, blokes, before you support their cause. While someone else posted, slowly people are realising BLM is anti-Semitic, anarchist, anti-white. Try that again. Another wrote, maybe research an organisation next time, blokes, before you support their cause. While someone else posted, slowly people are realising BLM is an anti-Semitic, anarchist, anti-white, anti-law and order movement and regretting their foolish support. BLM-UK has said it intends to be guided by a commitment to dismantle imperialism, capitalism, white supremacy. BLM has said it intends to be guided by a commitment to dismantle imperialism, capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy and the state structures that disproportionately harm black people in Britain and around the world, making it different to the US version, which does not cite ending capitalism as a policy goal. Now, there's a whole lot more to this story, which can be found following the link in the description. It was an interesting article, to be fair, in the Daily Mail, which you might want to check out yourself. Big thank you to the channel Patreon supporters. Of course, your support is truly appreciated, as is everybody who likes, shares, comments and subscribes. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe. Look after each other, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.